All right, hello everyone and welcome. This is the Scientific Governance Risk Call for MakerDAO, number 205. My name is Peyton and I'm one of the governance facilitators here at Maker. I go by Pros11 online if you're trying to look me up. Joined here today by a bunch of awesome people that care about the Maker protocol, some of them working in it, some of them contributing, some of them just interested to hear what's going on. This is our weekly call where we go over, try to answer that question, let you know what's happening, both in terms of governance, with proposals, in terms of risk and things we might want to be aware of, or things that might need a proposal in the future. We do have a few rules, I guess, to go over to make sure this is a smooth recording for both the people here and the people watching it back later. So yeah, number one is let's not talk over one another, right? That's really terrible for a recording. So if you notice you're speaking over someone, just stop. You can use a raise hand feature in Zoom, which will allow me to call on you and make it clear whose turn it is to talk. You can also always drop your comments or questions in chat, and I'm happy to read them off when conversationally appropriate. Let's see, other rules. If you can, cameras on, like we are very supportive of pseudonymous individuals contributing to Maker, so we understand there are reasons you may not want to turn on your camera, and that's totally fine. But if you're a person who does have their camera on, this is a great time to do it. Lets us see who you are, engage in more discussion. Basically just helps the vibe, for lack of a better term. Already talked about utilizing the raised hand and chat functions, so please do that. One I'm trying to get better at is when anytime someone speaks, we'll try to make sure they're introduced. You can help me out if I don't say your name and title when I call on you to speak by saying it yourself. Notice usually I'm pretty good at the start of the call, tend to forget about halfway through. So we'll see if we can string together a full performance there. And last but not least, if you have questions, ask them. Like, this is our open community call. We really do get value from the different perspectives, questions, thoughts from the community. And the only way we can benefit from them is if you share them with us. Cool. I think that covers the sticky part. So before we get into the agenda, I did have a quick kind of warm up, I guess you could say, involving the chat. Basically, if we could take 30 seconds and anyone who would like to answer could answer, how can we make today more perfect? Encourage you if you're watching the recording this as well. Of course, we won't be able to respond in real time, but maybe we'll keep it in mind for next time. So are there things that would make today more perfect? Maybe that we could do in this call, or just generally as an organization? I'll be looking for those in the chat. Deep breaths before talking. That's always good. David with the touch some grass. I like that. Cool. Well, don't want to delay things too much, but just a reminder that we are always open for feedback, and you will kind of get out what you put into this meeting. So the more you engage, the better the call will be for everybody. All right, that's enough soapboxing on my end, Thomas. Let's take it to the next slide and get into business here. So agenda fairly straightforward as usual. We'll start with the governance roundup, going over votes, what's happening with Maker improvement proposals, and the latest in the forum. I'm really excited to have one of my team members today presenting a demo of a governance dashboard we've been developing for a little bit here. So that'll be our initiative update. And finally, we'll round out today with our discussion segment. First talking about the target spend level poll that just concluded. And if there's still time and still interest, we can talk more about the real world finance, real world assets, ongoing developments there. Okay, let's get started in the vote side. All right, if you'll go to the next slide, Thomas. Do have a bit of an additional one today. Wanted to first make sure that everyone's aware. Some of you may have voted in the signal before we released our clarification on it. So I'm going to take just like 30 seconds here to say, hey, we do have this signal. I'm sure Artem is going to highlight it later today. Try not to steal its thunder. But GovAlpha did post a clarification that will be moving on chain if the amount of supporters is greater than 50% of the non-abstaining votes, just like a regular signal process, but there was some confusing wording in the original proposal, so we did want to clarify that. To kind of make up for this fact that we did have to clarify, and some people might have misunderstood, we did extend the voting for a week. So the signal on this vote, or the voting for the signal off chain, will last until September 2nd. And then if more than 50% of the non-abstaining votes come through, it will be put on chain on Monday, the 5th. So I just wanted to make sure you noted that. The slides here are linked, and that underlined portion is linked to the signal itself. Please do go review that and make sure you're voting how you wish to vote. All right, next one, Thomas. Thank you kindly. So in terms of polls, we had two concluded weekly polls. Forgot a mess there, sorry about that. We had the collateral onboarding project-based funding request that was put forward by Robert, that was passed. On the target spend level, this was a poll resulting from a signal that we're going to talk about in more detail later today. So I'll leave the framing until later, but the winning option there was 15 million. We'll cover our 6 concluded ratification polls in the next segment. And final reminder that there are still 3 ongoing green light polls. So if you do have an opinion, please express that before Monday. All right, thank you, Thomas. That brings us to executives. Yesterday's executive with the $25 million or 25 million drawdown from HV Bank didn't get processed. So that has been passed pending execution. Next week, we have another, our final drawdown in this initial set, plus updating the legal agreement for HV Bank and some layer 1 updates to support Maker Teleport. Look for some exciting news on the forum there. All right, enough talking on my end. I'm very happy to hand off the mic to Gala, one of our MIP editors, who will be telling you what's going on in the land of maker improvement proposals.
Hello, thank you, Peyton. So yeah, I'm here today for the MIPS general updates. So August ratification polls, they closed on Monday. We had 6 monthly cycle polls. There's all of them, but 1 passed. So we can take a look at, firstly, the top level MIPS. So MIP 76, Makershire Redux, passed. Makershire Redux is a 10 million DAI pool allocated across liquidity pools to support DAI liquidity and utility and earn yield. For the core unit budgets, we have 2 of them. For the DAI Foundation, the winning option is bear scenario. And for the Oracle's core unit, the winning option is the one that reduces the budget by 10% while accepting the core unit for further cuts for 1 year. Next, there's the core unit offboarding of the recently onboarded events core unit, which did not succeed. And for the amendments, we had 2 amendments being voted on. The MIP for C2 subproposal 23 amends MIP 50, the DAI direct deposit modules, to make it more general, less specific to lending protocols. And MIP for C2 subproposal 15 amends the core unit offboarding process. So specifically MIPs 38, 39, and 41. That was the idea at the beginning, and it's still the most salient feature of the amendment, but it also attempts to streamline the core unit related processes and generally to increase clarity around the core unit framework. So we have 2 resources on this. We had a Know Your MIP call on the amendment that can be found in this link I'm gonna share right now. Summary of the proposal from GovAlpha's perspective, that you can find right here. So next we can take a look at the proposals in RFC. We are going to review the latest and the most active ones. So let's see, for the MIP sets. We have the Maker DAO delegates MIP set that formalizes delegates as entities within the MIPS framework and establishes how they are to be compensated. We had a Know Your MIP call yesterday as well to explore this MIP set. So if you're interested in this call, you can check the forum post under the resources category. For core unit onboardings, we have the onboarding via splitting of a new real world finance core unit, which is the real world finance 0x. Next, we have 3 special purpose funds being requested. So 1 to fund the legal work on green lead collateral from backed finance. This proposal will enter the weekly governance cycle next Monday as a short ratification poll. So this is a poll that runs for 3 days. There's also 1 for funding further work from the ambassador program, entering a monthly cycle, and 1 to fund legal work on MIP 65 Monetalis Clydesdale. So this one too will enter the weekly cycle probably on September 5th. Then we have 2 MKR budgets, 1 for GovAlpha and 1 for the StarkNet engineering core unit. For the core unit offboardings, we have 3 of them. 1 for MIPs security, 1 for strategic happiness, and 1 for strategic finance core unit. There's 1 facilitator offboarding proposal in RFC to offboard the current real world finance facilitator William Remmer, and 1 facilitator onboarding proposal for Psychonaut, who upon ratification would become the 2nd facilitator for the Immunify Security Core Unit along with Traving. Finally, we have 2 amendments in RFC. So 1 that aims to shorten the feedback loop for delegate participation, which is currently calculated on a lifetime basis, and 1 that amends MIP 65. So it changes who is to verify that the legal and governance structure for this collateral is appropriate. So sorry, I'm trying to follow with the questions in the, you're talking about, Chris, about Psychonaut, the proposal. So that was, okay, awesome. So that's being answered by the, cool. Let's go to the important dates lastly. So we have 2 short ratification polls. That they will go on chain on Monday, August the 29th. Then the last day for introducing modifications in the proposals that are eligible to enter September cycle is August the 31st. And finally, the formal submission window, next one will open on Monday, September the 5th. Any information that you would like to explore more on, you can look at our weekly MIPS update on the forum. That's all on my side. Thank you very much.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Cal. All right. All right. Can I make sure we got microphones muted? 1 second. Sorry about that. That should take us to our forum update. And I see Artem ready in on the screen to give that. Take it away, Artem.
Oh, I'm muted. Yeah, I was posting the link. Recovering from a flu, so pardon me if I have to clear my throat during any time. But anyways, happy Thursday. Welcome to the GNR Forum recap and going over the week of August 18th to the 24th. And we'll get started with our announcements. Now, we have the hat getting a little chunkier as we welcome our 22nd, I believe, recognized delegate, Jason Janowitz. And Jason founded Blockworks. He's also the host of Empire Podcast. And he presented his delegate platform yesterday during the Meet Your Delegate call alongside with Matt, which is now up on YouTube. And the link is on the forum recap as well. So if you could go check out the video later if you're interested to know more about their delegate platforms. Next up, Brian McMichael and Chris Mooney from the PE core unit announced their resignation as mandated actors on August 22nd. They believe that the current core unit model and process supersedes the MIP 7 process for onboarding the mandated actors. However, though, nothing else changes. Both Chris and Brian will continue to operate in their roles as contributors and advisors to PE under Derek as the facilitator. And we usually skip the discussion and proposals because there's so many of them on a weekly basis. And it would also save some time as well as maintain a little bit of sanity for the GNR call. But I do want to note that this week did contain some high quality posts from Success, as well from PE and from Rune. So check it out. They're all on the forum recap. But we will continue with our signal request, which is now up. And we have 2 active signal requests ongoing right now. Our first signal request aims to gather sentiment regarding the compensation for former Real World Finance members, 𝘰𝘬𝘕 and TJ, of a pro rata amount of MKR for their work as part of the core unit. And both of them spent a combined total of more than 3,000 hours of onboarding, negotiating, and structuring real world assets for Maker. So both 𝘰𝘬𝘕 and TJ are seeking approval for this pro rata distribution of about 73 MKR to TJ's wallet and 48 MKR to 𝘰𝘬𝘕's wallet. And so far, in terms of vote breakdown, yes and no votes are almost evenly split. Majority, though, is currently abstained. However, the signal ends on September 2nd, as mentioned, which gives us another week to make any final decisions. And next up, as USDC concerns, Loom and USDC PSM continues to operate without fees. 𝘱𝘰𝘭𝘺 attempts to regain traction about his doubt on continuing 0% PSM fees, which was initially posted as a proposal idea a little over 7 weeks ago. And an effort to gauge sentiment on reducing USDC exposure, 𝘱𝘰𝘭𝘺 asks whether we should increase the TIN or tout on the USDC PSM and what base points should these parameters be set to. He presents both cons and pros to increasing either parameter. And in terms of the vote breakdown right now, the majority does not want to make any changes to both parameters, although setting the TIN to 1 base point, which is 0.01%, has been creeping up to the lead. This signal also ends on September 2nd, so it gives us an additional week for any final decisions to happen. And that's it. There's some more announcements on the forum at a glance, definitely a lot of discussions, and some more detail on the signal requests. So check it out. Thanks.
Right on. Appreciate it, Arden. I had some good back and forths in the chat. It looks like questions got answered, but if we do need to circle back to them later, just let me know. All right. Excited here. It means we're about time for our initiative updates. And I believe we just have Fernando's dashboard demo. Excellent. So I'll go ahead and ask Thomas, if you don't mind, stop sharing your screen. We'll let Fernando share his so you can walk us through the dashboard.
Well, hello, everyone. As Peyton mentioned, I'm Fernando from GoAlpha. So as any system grows, it becomes more difficult to track its correct operation. It's not the same. It's not the same making decisions or voting on a multi-sig where maybe just 2 out of 3 people sign a transaction to make a decision than a governance system with 40, 60, or even sometimes 100 people voting on each poll or each proposal. So based on that, and as Maker as an organization grows and Maker governance obviously grows with it, it makes sense to try and come up with a set of metrics that can we use and that can help us measure where we are now and how can we compare where we are versus where we were in the past. So how many people are voting on each proposal? And has that number been increasing or decreasing over time? How many addresses are currently delegating MKR? Do we have now more addresses than before or more MKR but less addresses? How many delegators we have? How many people from non-delegators can we consider that are constantly voting, so they are constant voters? Can we track that or not? So we currently have 120,000 NKR delegated to active, which means non-expired delegate contracts. But what does that mean? Is that our all-time high, or has that number decreased a bit over time, or it has just been increasing since the beginning of the delegation program? How can MKR holders keep track of everything that's happening around governance? That we know it sometimes may become a bit overwhelming. So how can we easily keep track of everything that's happening from forum posts, off-chain polls to executive votes? How do people tend to vote on different type of polls? Can we track that? Can we predict how a person will vote? So those are some of the questions that we started asking to ourselves when we initially came up with the idea of the dashboard, and some questions we are constantly asking ourselves in order to improve the status quo. And although some of those haven't been answered yet, we are constantly working to change that and provide MKR with more useful metrics. So anyone interested in MakerDAO, from MKR holders to delegates to core unit members, or actually anyone that's interested in Maker's governance, can easily see how we are performing right now and how we have changed over time. So today I want to show you some of the features the governance dashboard has, and some features we added recently, which some of you may already been familiar with them, but some of you may not. So without further ado, let's go to the dashboard. Let me share my screen. Wait.
And I'll drop a link in case people want to follow along.
Thank you. All right, can you see my screen?
Looking good.
Cool. So the governance dashboard currently consists of 3 sections, as you can see above. The stats section, the tracker section, and the delegate section. In the stats section, we have a set of metrics and charts regarding governance and delegation. You can see we have counters for how many delegates we currently have from recognized shadows and the total. And we also have here a toggle we can switch to show expired delegates or not show them. So if we change that, we can see how the amount of delegates, MKR delegated, delegator count, and the delegate tables change because that's counting those contracts that already expired. If we switch it on, we can see on the delegate table, we have the list of delegates with some of the delegate contracts that already expired here. So like, for example, we can see feedback loops. So the old contract already have 4 people delegating to them with almost 6,000 MKR. Same for other contracts. So currently we have like around 12,000 MKR delegated to expired delegates. But if we keep going through the dashboard, this is a new chart we created where we can see the flow of MKR from delegators to delegates. Here we have the top 8 delegates, or which is the same, the people who have delegated more than 1,000 MKR. And then we have the other MKR delegators. This chart is so cool because also we can switch to full screen any of the charts now, as you can see. So this chart is so cool because we can focus on any delegator or delegate address to be able to see it better. So if I click on this delegator, we can see it's only delegating to flip-flop-flop. But if we go to others like this, we can see how the breakdown of their MKR delegate MKR, the breakdown of how they delegate their MKR to different delegates. And we can also see that for delegates. Like here for Hasu, we see 3 people are delegating more than 1,000 MKR, and then the others are delegating the rest, which is around 200 MKR, I think. And here we can see how many people are currently delegating to them. So this should be 27 plus 3, 30 people. And we have some other charts, like the amount of NKR that's being staked and delegated on the chief over time since December 2020. Then we have the breakdown of the vote weight for all of the addresses in the chief, from recognized delegates to shadow delegates to individual users. That's sorted in a descending order by amount of MKR. Here we have a chart where we can see the same chart as above for a specific address. Like if I go to this address, we can see they have this amount of NKR staked since the end of June this year. If we go to a delegate, we can see how the NKR has been delegated to them over time. And you can also select here on the input above the addresses, as you can see here, or you can change times to see a specific period of time for the data. Then we have a chart that shows us how the MKR has been delegated to different delegators over time since the delegation program started. And then if you click on any time in that chart, this other chart changes to show how the delegate vote weights have changed was at that specific time. You can select any time from this chart to change the data, and if you want to, you can just go to the current state. And finally, but not least important, we have here the amount of unique addresses on each poll on average per month. So it's so cool. We can see here that these last couple of months that number has been increasing, which is always good. All right, but this is the stats section. Then we have the tracker section, and this is mostly a front end that we built to show in a more dynamic way the governance tracker Google Sheet that GovAlpha is maintaining. So here we can see everything that's happening around governance, from executive votes to just forum discussions. And you can click here or go on the tabs on the left to see data for each of those sections. And then we have the archive where you can fetch all proposals and all discussions if you want that. Of course, here you can click on the links to go to the forum discussion, or just go to the executive vote or the poll that led to that vote. But that's it for the tracker. And finally, this new section we just implemented a couple of weeks ago was the delegate section. So at first, this may seem pretty similar to the delegate tables that were on the stats section, but here you can see that we also have the metrics that GovAlpha keeps for the delegate tracking and the payments and stuff. But if you click on any delegate, you can see more information about them. So a more detailed view of their participation and communication stats, as well as MKR delegated, but also you can track all of the comments that the delegates are making regarding polls and executive votes. This is fetching from the on-chain polls and executives from the voting portal, as well as the delegate platform. So here you see we have tabs for all forum or on-chain. Here you can easily switch if you only care about one of them, but you can also see all of the comments from that delegate. And this is really cool because you can go directly to that comment, that poll. You can see where that was created and the poll or the executive. Let me see if I can find one executive. Well, we can look for that later, but you can see what that comment corresponds to. And then on the search input, you can look for a specific keyword or poll or executive. Well, there's currently no comment for an executive. But if I go to, like, for example, poll A34, it fetches you the comment for that poll. So if you want to to see what specifically a delegate said for a specific poll you're interested in, you can just type here the poll or also the date. And although this is currently just showing comments and some basic stats, we're planning to increase this section to show more useful information about delegates, like the way they vote for different types of vote, which different polls they support the most, and how the whole delegate group votes or not vote. But that's it for now. As always, if you have any feedback or comments or just questions, feel free to ask or share so we can keep improving this tool. Thank you.
That's really awesome. Thank you, Hernando. I'll go ahead and have you stop sharing your screen just so we can let Thomas get back on the other side. Awesome. We had a few cool comments coming in during that for sure. One important point, Cal asked us to clarify that that was set up for addresses, right? So they could be independent people, but likely there are some entities that control multiple addresses that it wouldn't account for. Let's see, not seeing any hands, trying to scroll through this. See, Chris Blick had a question about how poll participation is calculated. I'll drop that tracking sheet in here when I get a moment, and we can figure out if there's an issue there.
Yeah, those metrics are taken from the sheet that 𝘰𝘬𝘭𝘺 is keeping track of for participation and communication.
Cool. Well, I wanted to say, cool. We're getting like feature requests as this is coming in. Sorry, I was getting distracted by them. One for like maybe showing what vote style gets missed or stuff like that. That's a great idea. And one of the reasons we wanted to share this with y'all, because basically we think this tool is really valuable. We can make it more valuable if we understand like how people who use it might want to use it. So thank you, Hernando, for showcasing what you've been working on and how it can add value to the DAO. Awesome. So I think that'll move us on into our discussion segment, unless we have any further follow-ups. All right. To discussion we go. I believe we are starting. Yes, with the target level spent. So I've made Adrian co-host. I don't know if you're looking to share right now, but so we'll have to you stop sharing again, Thomas. Sorry to make you go back and forth.
Yeah, let me just bring up. So this caught us a little bit unawares because we were just like putting together the forum post to summarize the results and the next steps as we saw them. But I think it's a nice opportunity to go over the process from start to finish, review the results, and see how the community feels on this GNR about the results of this survey and whether there's any feedback or things that they'd like to see in the process moving forward. One sec. Sorry, I'm not used to Zoom. Okay. All right, can you see? All right, I'll assume that everyone can see. So basically this poll, the target spend level, came out with a result of 15 million DAI. The question that it was asking was, what should the targeted spend level be for workforce expenses over the next 6 months? The idea behind this framing is to give core units guidance on how they want to put budget proposals together in order to reach a break-even level, and then leave the estimation of whether this effort is sufficient up to the delegates when it comes to ranking those choices. So 15 million DAI on an annualized basis roughly represents $30 million, which is quite a bit below where we stand today. So just to recap, on the thread where we posted the signal request, you have a view of what the revenues could be over the next 12 months. And we invite people to literally just plug in the numbers. It's a very straightforward, very basic model, just to be able to see what the impact would be on a month-by-month basis. And here, the only thing that we tried to highlight was the timing of some of these. So for example, since the poll started, Monetaris has been delayed by 1 month. So we'll update this in the post and move Monetaris by at least 1 month to start in September. And then using this, the idea is, where did that go? Here. The idea is that we follow, so over the course of the whole process, where we just completed this on-chain target spend vote, we've now determined this parameter, the target spend level, which brings us into the messiest part of this whole process and which will require the highest degree of coordination. So here the ask is to have core units coordinate to, first of all, determine their own budgets across various scenarios for the next 6 months. And this can be anything from the existing budget to the budget that was recently approved for example, the Oracle's core unit. And then determine scenarios of sort of lights on base expansion. And the thinking here is that an aggregation of all of these budget requests can give delegates a holistic picture of what the spend in the DAO will look like over the next 6 months, and they can compare that to their desired spend level. Obviously, not all of the delegates have the same desired spend level. So, the delegates will have to also weigh amongst themselves what budget proposal is more reasonable. And then to do this, so to come up with this overall picture, we've come up with this template, which will, the endpoint of this whole exercise will essentially be this template where different budget options will be selectable. And this helper Excel spreadsheet should allow delegates to allocate a desired level of budget amongst different types of core unit budget requests. I will note that this process is actually agnostic to whether you do this allocation on a core unit basis or on a project basis, as SES have recently suggested with their budget proposal. So at the moment, we still have core units, but over this could be one example of a way of how to essentially bid and allocate points, if you will, towards the desired budget level, but to do so in one shot instead of throughout the year or through budget windows, in order to have greater perspective, a greater view of what the expected next 6 months will be. And that's it. I mean, the idea for us from our team was to post this on the forums to summarize, and we expect that there'll be some discussion there, but I think it's good to get some early feedback from the community and get a sense of where people are. I'd also like to take a look at the chat, which is blowing up.
So we had one question about like the Oracle's budget. One of the clauses in their last budget that was just recently passed on Monday was that they were kind of voluntarily proposing a lower spend in exchange for not having to be subject to further cuts.
Yeah, and like Mark points out, I think the way to think about this is to basically, it's more about like actual spend than about recreating a new budget. The Oracles have recently had their budget approved. So you would essentially submit the same. And you could assume that delegates will hold to the social contract that they've quote unquote signed with the Oracle's core unit. Yeah. Do you want to introduce complexity in the name of reducing spend?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a little bit ago. I mean, so back a little bit, but yeah, I remember like there was conversations of like you know, every quarter return the money that you didn't spend, and then get you like sort of that was sort of the thing I was thinking about. I think maybe that was removed or not. If that makes sense.
No, sorry, would you mind repeating that? I bet.
Okay, so I haven't fully been up to date on what the latest like templates are for like what it is, but if like you have to return sort of portions of budget every quarter or something like that, then that's that's extra mental like accounting every quarter, and that is a sort of complex. You introduce the incentive to have to spend your full amount so that you don't return it, and you basically complicate the whole system of calculating expenditures rather than simplify it in the name of trying to reduce it. You actually make it more expensive by making the cognitive overhead of doing it more expensive.
Yeah. No, but look, so there are two things. One is there is in the most recent MIP 40 amendment, there is a request that any funds in excess of 3 months be returned, right? So hopefully this doesn't necessarily drive the use it or lose it incentive. And then the other thing, yes, John will be making all of these sheets available in the upcoming forum post. And then the other point was that, yes, this is, I wouldn't say needlessly complex, but given our headless organizational structure, and given that the delegates are not a management team, there's no easy way to do this in a decentralized way. And all this is just a social contract. I mean, CUs can just ignore all of it and not do anything. And then delegates will have to evaluate whether they're happy with that or not. What we're trying to do is organize community efforts to identify what the actual spend, sort of projections for actual spend for the next 6 months in order to hit a target level of profitability that delegates have signaled in prior similar requests.
Thanks for winding there, Bourbon, and answering, Adrian.
No worries. It's always great to talk about cutting budgets. Real fun.
Did we want to explore kind of like, I mean, 15 million ended up being the selected option from the on-chain poll. I don't know if you had thoughts about like explaining what exactly that means to people maybe.
So the results of the poll, so the poll essentially asked, so it was the outcome of a signal request that asked people to vote on a tier of spending that they would like to see voted on. So it's like a second degree, like a second order signal request with a, sorry. And then within that tier, it asked delegates to rank desired levels of spend. So essentially this 15 million is not, it's not like 100% of delegates want this or 50 or any number. It's just the option that has the most preference. And you'll find that actually the second most voted preference was no change. And the third was 17 million. So there is some distribution, which means that when it comes to the delegates and agreeing amongst each other, if they even want to do this, because the intent of this whole process is to have a handful of manageable aggregate core unit budget requests that then the delegates can actually vote on in a sort of binary way. And so this 15 million is a guideline. A 30 million budget is quite an aggressive cut. But then again, it is also on spend. We're not asking for sort of budgets with contingencies and what have you. This is like a truest picture of what the next 6 months will look like for a core union. Although, yeah, Chris had an interesting point where he wanted to vote for a 0 million DAI budget, which is actually quite interesting. And maybe it's something that we could build into a long-term planning. I personally share the same view or similar view. I don't think it'll ever get as close to 0, but it's certainly something that could be explored. I think now we were trying to do it more in a sort of short-term basis. We could always yank all of the budgets, but the protocol would probably stop working.
So do we have like a kind of questions about why this approach was selected maybe, or next steps perhaps? Yeah, I just want to make sure we're able to fully explore this topic. If we don't
Sure.
have questions, that's fine too. But
so here as a next step, and we'll post details in the sort of response to the voting in the forum, but the idea is that the core unit facilitators should be able to develop spending forecasts across 3 scenarios. And here we've incorporated and essentially group some of this spend across different ranges of, let me reframe, ask themselves or have a conversation with the delegates, to have the delegates ask key performance questions. I believe this insight came from Frank the other time that we talked about this, which should instigate the production of key performance indicators that then the delegates can track against those questions. So much in, sorry, I'm following the chat also. So much in terms of concrete next steps. We'll explain how one way that you could approach this bottom-up budget construction, and how some of the tools and spreadsheets can potentially help. But yeah, I mean, as paper indicates, we're just trying to come up with a social contract at various points in the past. Different stakeholders, different delegates, different token holders have expressed the desire to reach, at the very least, break even during the bear market. And what we're trying to do is facilitate a way to essentially get there. It could be that everyone changes their mind and they're happy with the way things are.
yeah, it's a particularly interesting governance question, I think, because, right, like when you look at the situation, we see a number of people coming into the Discord, to the forum, to our calls, kind of expressing worry or concern over the amount of spending versus revenue. So it's like, okay, well, if we're going to address that, how do you do that within an organization that's just 20 independent teams?
Exactly.
The default is to wait for them to voluntarily propose a lowered budget, which could be quite slow.
And yeah, and I guess having these on-chain polls does allow for a sense of where token holder views are. And what we try to do is have signal requests to sense the community perspective, but then gate the final on-chain poll to the token holders only, to try and make that fair to the token holders and not just to the sock puppets. They're not necessarily binding. Like none of the off-chain governance is strictly speaking binding. The only real binding governance is the executive spell, right? At least in terms of state changes to the system. But it's all like social contracts, and we will adhere to them in one form or another. So we're just trying to find a minimal one. An easier one could have just been like, hey guys, propose your, whatever, budget cuts for the next 6 months. And if this process stalls, it may well be what we end up doing. I mean, yeah, agreed paper to the extent that this isn't the formal MIP. It's just like we're trying to get there, right? There's no like social contract as such, but it's just like, this is what token holders voted for on chain of the various polls. Exactly. It's more of a temperature check. I agree. The end product of this whole process should be a collection of budgets that could be submitted as a MIP.
All right, we're still getting some chat trickling in here. Going to be mindful of time, but we do still have plenty of it. So maybe give a last little prod here. If there are aspects of this process that you want to explore further, you should bring them up now. All right. Well, huge thanks to Adrian for presenting that, and to the strategic finance team for proposing the framework and kind of furthering these discussions. Pleasure to have you.
Always happy to be the unpopular, to pick the unpopular topics.
Yeah. Well, someone's got to do it, I suppose.
This isn't, Robert, this isn't a new budget MIP. It's a set of budget MIPs to replace, but whatever. I mean, the forum thread will go up soon. So yeah, look, if you have any thoughts or concerns, you can post them there also.
All right. Looks like we have Thomas's screen back up. Looks good, Thomas. Thank you. If you want to go to the next slide, I think this was our kind of overflow topic. Basically said if we didn't spend all the time discussing what we previously had on the agenda, we would make time for this one, as it's been a kind of reoccurring struggle with the DAO as we sort through this. Also, of course, willing to explore other avenues if there's no interest in talking about this with you. Was there anything on the GovCom side? I guess. Oh, sorry, I see Josh has a hand. So let you speak.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering why I had posted on the forums, wondering why the new real world finance core unit, the 0x1, was trying to split the budget from the original real world finance core unit instead of just getting a new budget, so they'd be two independent core units. And if the old one wanted to shut down, because there's an offboarding proposal for William in play, I mean, that could happen too, but it just seems simpler. I was just kind of wondering, like, why my post didn't get any interest or response, and if anyone wanted to respond to it, I'd be curious to hear.
Yeah, sure,
this
Matt.
is Christian. Oh, hey, Keish. Go ahead.
What up, CP? Yeah, look, from our perspective, at the very beginning of this, we were prompted by the current RWF 001 facilitator to spin out a core unit, right? And given that, there was that stamp of approval, we figured, given that the resources of the core unit, meaning the staff, would be free in one core unit and one in another core unit, that we would split an existing budget as it was a spin out. We also figured that, given that we all need to tighten our belts, that it would be more palatable and more reasonable, given the backdrop of a bear market, to split existing resources as opposed to going to the DAO and requesting new resources.
And the other thing that I would just add to that is we anticipated that the existing budget would carry us through to the next budget cycle. And as I indicated at the last governance call, both core units would have to ask for funds, and it'd be up to the maker token holders as to how they wanted to allocate, from 0 to whatever. So our logic was just to ensure a degree of continuity through to the start of the next budget cycle.
And I guess I can add to that, Josh, that I have also been getting questions of, like, should this proposal be allowed to happen, right? It is a different implementation perhaps than we've seen before of core unit onboardings. On the governance end, right, it's kind of just combining an onboarding and a budget reduction proposal into one. So it's really not terribly complicated from that perspective. However, we can see why socially people might have strong opinions depending on their support of either of the groups.
I mean, additionally, there's the possibility, I personally have no clue how MKR token holders are going to vote, but there is the possibility that the existing facilitator of 001 gets offboarded, and in that case, there's sort of the natural outcome of a split of existing budget makes more sense in the case that that offboarding occurs.
Again, while proposals are an RFC, the changes still can be made as well, right? So if the community felt strongly, Josh, that your position should be true, if the proposal authors wanted to take that into place, they could amend their proposal before sending it to them.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I brought this up is it just seemed like a lower friction way to go if you just request a separate budget, make everything independent. I mean, if everyone's okay with splitting the budget, then I don't have any objection. It just seems kind of like a cumbersome or it seems like it could influence the vote. Just that aspect of the proposal, well, I don't know. If no one else feels the tension here, then I'm happy to drop it.
Josh, when you say it could influence the vote, do you mean in a perverse way, or it will just influence the vote? Because of course that's the truth.
Yeah, like in a perverse way, because if I don't know where William is at with his core unit, but if he feels like this onboarding the 0x core unit is kind of like an attack on his unit, then he could lobby against it just for that reason. If they were independent, then he wouldn't have that excuse to complain about it. I don't know, that's kind of what I was thinking. But if he's okay with it, then I don't have an objection. It just seems kind of weird to me to open that door.
Yeah, and I think the other point on this is Christian again. I just think the other point that I'd like to reiterate is, and I know there's been comments in the forum regarding competition between core units, but I think those comments are entirely inconsistent with a desire for the core units to perform, right? So in some sense, if you do split a core unit and you are forcing competition, so whether Will likes the proposal or not, at the end of the day, what I think we were making an effort to offer to Maker was effective execution of deals, transparency, and a strategy, right? And ultimately, that was why we felt the value in splitting out the core unit, because I don't think Eric, Tej, or myself felt that within RWF 001, either three of those were necessarily taking a priority. And so from our perspective, I think having that competition between core units is actually very valuable, because Maker token holders say they want KPIs, they want performance. Okay, here we're giving you an opportunity to have KPIs, have performance, have measurable benchmarks, and it just seemed like a kind of a logical progression from that requirement. Because otherwise, there aren't. I mean, the community hasn't been able to agree on a KPI system, right? They haven't been able to say, hey, is core unit performing? What have they done for us lately? And at least in this particular way, we were trying to accentuate the differences and promote competition.
Christian, I applaud your willingness to be competitive, but it just seems like since you just need a small what is it, three or less than 6 months of budget anyway. It just seems like it would be a lot cleaner from a voting perspective if the proposals were independent, like the two core units. Like if you just requested a fresh budget, and then the budget for real world finance 001 Williams core unit could be addressed separately. But it's up to you. I'm not I don't feel that strongly.
thank you for the advice, and it's something that I think we need to reconsider. It's always good to get alternative viewpoints. So thank you.
And it does highlight kind of I don't know, one of the many challenges for proposal authors, right? Because here's a group that says, hey, we want to keep working for Maker, we'd like to do that. But then they kind of have to take their best stab of like, do we think it's more likely they would support us working for them if we propose independent funding, or if we proposed our share of this funding, right? So when you put your head in the proposal author, you see like, without in-depth talks like this, without input from delegates and other MPR holders, it can be very difficult to know like what is actually preferred and what is, basically following community sentiment versus what you think community sentiment might be. You see, we got a hand from one of our recognized delegates, Code Knight. If you want to take the mic, go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, if you were to put forward a proposal to like say, oh, I want Williams bad at his job, I want to offboard him and replace him, that's like okay, at least procedurally for me. But the idea that there's this implication when you say, oh, I'm going to take 3/4 of his budget, he hasn't really agreed to this, and we're going to keep him on, like that's just not a good way to run things. Because like the implication of your kind of proposal is that Williams is going to stay on, or RF01 is going to stay on basically after being attacked, right? Because someone came in and they just took 3/4 of their budget without their agreement. Now, if William like supports the proposal, that's fine, but I don't want to create that precedent that like any CU can just be kind of undermined in that way, and like and delegates might be okay with that. Versus if you wanted to argue for replacing him, that's something I think it's just a cleaner proposal. Or if he agrees to it, or just you're setting up a separate CU. But it's this combination of like attacking him, but you're also leaving him in the CU. That just seems weird, bad to me.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm sorry, Tisha. I think the comment is fair. I can say that when we were looking at our alternatives, we obviously evaluated the potential of offboarding, right? And there's no doubt that is an option that could have been considered. We thought that, at least certainly, Tighe and Eric can speak for themselves, but my view, and generally our view, was that the offboarding would have been more contentious, particularly coming within the core unit. I haven't been at Maker forever, so maybe there are examples of core unit members offboarding the core unit facilitator. I don't know, but we thought that it might have been politically more palatable and suitable to not make that decision, or not force the delegates to make that decision, fully recognizing that there's an implicit statement that should be the case by our proposal. I don't disagree with that. And we had two options to choose from, and we chose one, but I think we did give careful consideration to each, because frankly, neither one of them is a particularly easy decision to make, right? Because had we done the offboarding proposal, there'd have been a handful of arguments going the other way, which are perfectly fine. And we thought this may have been the most, and perhaps wrongly, but we thought that perhaps this was the most, the smoothest facilitation to what we had hoped to achieve.
And to just add to that, look, in hindsight, I think a lot of the way that these budget requests have proceeded is a little bit perverse. But if you wind back all the way to the beginning, right? Christian, Eric, and I, suggested to Will that he step down, right? And then he suggested to us that we spin out. And so in good faith, we did. And that's kind of where we're at today. I just want to remind everyone of the clear chronology there.
Appreciate the perspective from the proposal authors. Really nice to have you on the call to discuss this. Do we have other things we'd like to discuss or ask on this topic? saw one call in chat to move on to potentially something else, but I'm gonna make sure we got everything addressed. No pressure, Robert, but if you wanted to come on the mic to talk about some of that stuff, that might take us in some good discussion.
Yeah, in the context of just budgets in general, and I know that there's a lot of discussion around RWF and the different core units and the onboarding and such. I'm staying clear of that. What I'm just referring to in my comment is that there are hard costs associated with RWAs. And I did an update for collateral onboarding and management today in the form, so please take a look at that if you haven't. And just trying to outline the professional services that are needed on an ongoing basis. And true, a lot of that is spent up front to be able to onboard collateral, but there are ongoing needs that we have. And so we do talk about budget cuts, and I just want to be clear that if there isn't a resolution, let's say, and the RWF 0x doesn't get approved, and let's say the RWF 001 goes away, our budget will most likely go up. And I say CES's budget. So I wouldn't expect to see a decrease in our budget. I would expect the community to be prepared for an increase. That's all.
Appreciate it, Robert. So we have Kyunga asking, like, what's happening with Real World Finance 101? I don't know who might be best to answer that question. Like, obviously we're seeing some foreign posts, we're seeing some engagement from there, and a lot of kind of talks over responsibility, but I'm not sure.
I don't think anyone knows. I think Peyton, the fact that well, I don't know, I shouldn't say that, but I think the fact that it's not obvious is a problem. We don't really know what's going on. I believe we're no longer part of Maker. I don't know what exactly is happening inside 001.
Yeah, on my end, I can say, like, I've had plenty of chats with Will, right, about governance matters. He answers them in a prompt enough manner. Like, so from my end, not too much has changed for the governance side, right? Okay, I've got a facilitator who's responding to me and my requests, but certainly will seem to indicate that like a lot of political discussions have been going on, and he's trying to work with those. But I don't really feel like it's fair to me to say much more than that on my end.
Fair enough. So I think a helpful update might be like what's going on the hiring front, who he's thinking of bringing on board, like when can we expect sort of deals to resume, things of that nature. Do we have any inclination there?
Well, before we go there, right? I guess as a delegate, 3F delegate, kind of wants to get an idea of what went wrong, because we've had facilitators gradually step down and other folks step in. And Peyton, correct me if I'm wrong, but Duck's core unit, that was terrific. Exchange, data insights, that was terrific. Is there any way delegates could get an idea, and MKR token owners, what exactly went wrong when you guys had the conversation of splitting into a different core unit? And Will was asked to step down, and then how did it, go sideways?
Yeah. I mean, this is Christian. So, I probably started. I started the process because I quit. And the reason I quit was, as I explained in the write-up on the forum, was my frustration in not being able to provide what I thought the Maker token holders, what I thought the customers, what I thought DAI holders expected, which was performance. And and 𝘠𝑃RO, I think this was it was you that was speaking. you had made a comment in one of the office hours that there were no closers in real world finance. And you will recall I jumped on that very quickly because we had only within the week closed HVB within less than 3 months. And I saw that as a real issue, that the delegates were not seeing what I thought was, beginning to be a high performing team. And, the fact that that wasn't being communicated really stuck with me. We then had a discussion as a team, we're just very transparent, on OPM. Not OPM itself, but on the Egypt deal. And, there has been a open, fairly sizable gap in what ADTC was looking for an interest rate and what we, based on our independent consultant, thought was a reasonable interest rate for an Egyptian deal. And I drafted a kind of pros and cons chart to actually go to the maker token holders to say, okay, here are the issues, here's what's going on, here are the pros and cons of each side. And I had suggested to Will, look, we need to post this and get, really try to get some guidance from the maker token holders, because we have a difference of opinion, and it's not fair to either ADTC, it's not fair to OPM, it's not fair to the maker token holders, and it's not fair to the core unit that we don't have a mechanism to kind of reach alignment. And we don't want to be in a position that we are then targeted for gatekeeping and so forth. So I said, okay, look, here's the issue. Let's put it out there. And there was a real reluctance by the core unit facilitator to post that. And to me, at that point, we were just setting ourselves up for failure, which is what I had, I think, made very clear in my posting, that I thought we were being set up for failure. And at that point, I was like, well, my career's, been doing this a long time. I know what we need to do to get from point A to point B. If we're not in a position to get from point A to point B, well then, frankly, it's not worth my time. So that's when I quit. And I think it was just a culmination of inability, reluctance to act. And that's why I have been very clear that from a competition standpoint, I actually want the competition, because I have no doubt that RWF0X will be far more competitive, will be far more transparent, will be far more responsive to the maker token holders. We can have a discussion on strategy. I know Chris Bleck has wanted to have a discussion on, should we even be doing real world finance? What is the potential exposure? Well, we need to have those conversations, but it needs to be the core unit facilitator that's leading it, or at least demonstrating a willingness to lead it. And that just wasn't the case. And to me, that then just sets us up for failure, because again, we will be told, we're gatekeeping, we're privately entangled, we're not transparent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the commentary and critique that has been there, fair enough. Then let's address it. Let's actually proactively address each one of those issues. But he wasn't willing to do it. So I was like, fine then. Why put myself in a position to get shot when I know I'm going to get shot? I'd rather be proactive and try to address those issues. And he wasn't able to do it.
Hey, it's Eric, another RW or OX team member. I just wanted to weigh in with Christian's view that there's really good deals to be done here. We've really enjoyed doing SocGen and HVB, but it was mostly the three of us, and it's a difficult job to be an RWF, particularly the facilitator. You're in the crosshairs. There's a lot of politics and things going on. I have sympathy for whoever gets that role. It's kind of the consolation prize. But the three of us felt like we were more and more leading ourselves and not able to really get leadership from the CU facilitator. I think he has a lot of good skills. He's a smart guy, but geez, like on these tough issues, we were just kind of like hiding as a team. We're not communicating with Maker, enough. People are unhappy with what we're doing. And our natural inclination with Christian and I and Tej is like, let's go engage the community. You know, let's ask people to vote on what they want us to do, because there's some really sharp polarizing issues. Let's just, you know, show people what they are and then ask them what the voters want to do. And we just never really got support with leaning into things. It was kind of a more reactive, hiding strategy, to be honest. You know, and I'm not saying it's the wrong strategy, but it really just kind of, it made it really hard for us to get anything done. It felt like most of the stuff was done, you know, in the last 6 or 8 months was really because the three of us, you know, almost in spite of the facilitator at times. And that's harsh, but since people are asking, I'm going to say it. And that's my rough experience. You know, Tej, do you want to give your experience, since people want to, you know why there's frustrations with the facilitator?
I think people generally know where I'm coming from. And I think you guys summarize it well. And I think the best use of the next 10 minutes would really be to give it back to the community to see what they want to talk about and what they care about.
I do appreciate the perspective that's being provided there. Did you have something else to add, Eric? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off if you were about to speak.
No, I'm good. I just wanted to, since people asked what the tensions were, I felt like I needed to say my view and back up Christian and TJ.
Hey everyone. Hi, I just thought I'd jump on the mic because I think people aren't understanding my comments in the chat. So I'll just speak to it briefly, that, you know, I get that there's an offboarding proposal for Will. Okay, but I think the larger question, concern, or observation I have is just more dynamically, more holistically, the variety of posts and exchanges about this whole situation seems to me to be like 95%, you know, Eric, Tej, and Christian, like on the witness stand. And it could just be my perspective, and I've missed a similar, you know, kind of questioning of what's happening with real world finance, with Will. And if the answer is just that, like, he's MIA, except with the people that he's speaking to privately who don't feel at liberty to share, I'm just expressing that I think that that's a problem. And I don't feel, and I could be missing these comments because I don't spend my whole life on the forums and Discord, but it would just be great for that to be acknowledged, I think, in this community, that, you know, there's like more going on here than what Eric, Christian, and TJ, you know, need to answer for. And so if people are saying, well, we posted the offboarding and that's all we can do, because that's, I don't know, I don't think that's really acceptable. I mean, how many weeks has it been? There's an entire Discord server. Like, there are people, I don't know if they're on this call, who have a personal relationship with Will. Like, I just don't, I mean, just overall the impression, my impression feels like we're just extremely accepting and complacent about what I think are some things that need to be answered for. And so my constructive idea is not any constructive idea other than to mouth off on this call and express it to the community that I see like an imbalance here. And
so, Qianga, if I could jump in here for a moment, it is worth noting that William's actual like geographic location makes it very hard for him to attend some of the regularly scheduled calls at Maker. Unfortunately, I know he was present at a real world finance office hours last week.
That for him right now is
no. I'm just giving. Hold on. Please let me. Hold on, Qianga.
He still has a responsibility.
Listen, Qianga, we have a rule that we don't like cut each other off. So let me please finish what I was gonna say. I was adding that for the recording for context, because that is an important piece of the context.
And he did make himself at least somewhat available last week. And I'm not saying any of this to put down the validity of what you're saying, Qianga. I'm just giving some context for the people listening in. Yeah.
Okay, I apologize for interrupting you. I just think that it would have been nice, especially given the specific comment I made, if the very first response wasn't like to excuse, and it's not just about this call, right? It's a sort of, and yeah, I went to the office hours last week, but it's, in my mind, this is the last thing I'll say and I'll be quiet. There's like a standard that I feel as a community we should uphold in terms of conduct. And, you know, I don't see people complaining about, you know, oh, he's been on the forum commenting, whatever. I mean, fine. I'm just stating holistically, like anyone can rebut with facts. I'm just giving my opinion and impression that I think we're missing the bar. We're missing the mark in terms of holding accountable what our expectations are around conduct, professionalism, at least in expressing outrage, right? Or expressing that. So that would be my concrete suggestion, that if anyone else besides the offboarding post, but just like in the back and forth, if there are other people who feel silenced for some reason about, you know, things that we think have not been handled well, you know, that's just my concern, and I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you for bringing it up, Qianga. Paper, I see you lowered your hand. Is that because you no longer wish to speak? If so, I'm happy to call on 𝘧𝘪𝘦 in the meantime. But if you do want to speak, just throw the hand back up, Paper. 𝘧𝘪𝘦, take it away.
Sure. I was just going to say, people are engaging more with Will and Tej because we want to continue working with them. I mean, at some point, I think with Will, he's just kind of gone silent, and he's in a stage where he's even said he doesn't see himself working here in 6 months. So there's just no point in talking about that, because like there's nothing constructive to be done other than put up offboarding proposals. Unless someone wants to put a dispute resolution up, like there's nothing we can do. Whereas with like Christian and Tej, and we can keep talking to them because like we might actually care about their conduct, because they might do useful things with us in the future. So that's kind of why I engage with them. It's not because I'm siding with Will, it's because I think they're actually like someone that could potentially work with the DAO in the future.
Thanks for providing your perspective there, 𝘧𝘪𝘦. I will say
that's fair. I just want to also, Raphael, to your point about, you know, outrage, and I think what I guess I wouldn't want there to be an impression, or maybe to people to come away with the impression that like we're fine with well, I don't know, maybe there's just nothing more to really say, and it's just a frustrating situation, but like, you know, the discord that's there, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I don't know, sometimes something just still feels unsatisfactory in terms of, you know, what we should be communicating or about our expectations for a situation like this.
Thanks, Qianga. I see from Raphael, another recognized target takeaway.
Yeah, Qianga, so I think, like, I totally get the point about conduct, and I think that's a discussion that's absolutely worth having, and I'd like to have that. I think doing that spur of the moment in the heat of this, whatever it is not the right thing. I think that needs to be a very measured and thoughtful and deep discussion to come up with something that's useful in the long term. And it shouldn't be reflexive, like, you know, oh, don't want that. Of course, I don't want that the facilitator of a core unit goes MIA for 2 weeks. You know, I mean, I think that goes without saying. But if we want to construct such a code of conduct, then let's think about it, but do it well, I think, and not from a place of reaction. You know what I mean?
Well, that's fine. But I think also I'm just pointing out it's all of our responsibilities. Like I can write a code of conduct. I think it's totally natural to react, and it's appropriate at times to react. People are reacting all the time in different ways. So we were talking earlier about there being like social contracts that are here, you know, like things go on chain and then there's a social contract. I just want to push back on the idea that the right response to everything is when someone brings up an issue is like, okay, well, you go write a document about it, or you go write a proposal and then we can talk about this. So I'm just advocating that, you know, the things that I've said. I hear everyone has different styles, so, you know, appreciate the dialogue.
Yeah, I'm going to try to start winding this down, but please do consider raising your hand or dropping a comment or question if there is more to add. To kind of start that process, I did want to explain, like, one of the difficulties on the governance side is always going to be with kind of the rules versus expectations, right? Because our rules are very clear that, like, all right, well, core units are independent. You know, we put a facilitator in charge of them. We give them the responsibility of their mandate and for reporting and interacting with the DAO. And if they fall short on expectations, you know, our answer to that is that we solve it in the governance process. But that kind of leaves a long time between the problem being identified and the matter going to vote, where we get to have conversations like this and try to figure out how, all right, well, if this were to happen again, what are some things we can do to put in place and make it less painful? So yeah, would say as governance facilitator, I've kind of in the middle of a lot of this and very much experienced some of the pain. There's no shortage of people trying to contribute to that. It's just what we can do to move forward, I guess, is going to be the ultimate question. All right. Looks like Chad is mostly moved off topic here, and I'm aware that I did run a little over. So wanted to appreciate everyone for coming on this call today and getting in touch with us. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Reminder that all the stuff that was referenced has threads in the forum. That forum is designed for more long-term communication for debate, discourse. So it would be great if we could take some of this energy, some of these opinions, and make sure we post them up so others can read and learn and build on our own ideas too. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining. We'll be in touch and see you next time.